Oh, hello, and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box. Well, it's rare that I talk about one piece of music when we're doing our classical music episodes, which creep up every now and then like a little mole in a whack-a-mole game. But I felt compelled to do this one because I thought that there's some interesting philosophical truisms about musical perception and musical performance that derive from a discussion of Schumann's Fourth Symphony. Now, the theme of this video, if you will, is how conducting is as important as the actual composition. Sometimes it feels as though it's more important, but if you listen to the critics, or if you listen to musicians who don't really get why we make music, they might tell you the opposite. The composition, the things written on the page, the black and white notes are inert and meaningless until they are sprung to life by musical performers. And in the classical realm, the performer who is creating the performance in real time is, of course, the conductor, the maestro. Now, we've talked a lot before about how. In the second half of the 20th century, particularly the last few decades of that century or so, a movement sort of sprung about with the in saying intention might be strong for some, might not be strong for others, but a movement sprung up that had the effect, let's say, of destroying Beethoven performances by taking all the Beethovenness out of it. Beethoven's music was intended to be larger than life, dynamic, with lots of tempo fluctuation based on the emotional and ideological, even realities of the composition. This is something known as tempo rubato. And the conductors that grew up in Beethoven's time and then matured after his death, as well as other composers, the people who remarked and wrote about Beethoven in his lifetime, all knew this. And yet, some idiots in the second half of the 20th century liked to pretend otherwise and liked to assume that Beethoven music should be thin, stiff, weak and unemotional, and that makes it, of course, suck. But Beethoven, of course, is the greatest composer ever. Everyone acknowledged that, including Wagner, who wrote so much about this and who, in many ways, created the modern school of conducting that I'm talking about, the good school of conducting. Um, but there we are. We can listen to Beethoven performances that are real Beethoven or the fake kind. That's the preamble, and those who are familiar with this channel know all about these discussions, which I'm sure we will have once again. Now, on to Schumann. Schumann was from the sort of middle romantic period, a high romantic, if you will. He wasn't an innovator like Wagner or Liszt. He wasn't from the larger than life late romantic period of people like Bruckner and Strauss. He was right smack dab in the middle. And his music is much beloved and rightly so. He was a wonderful composer. A lot of people particularly love his chamber works, his solo piano works, and his lieder, his songs, which of course are all great. But he composed four symphonies, all of which are very good, and the fourth in particular I find to be his masterpiece. It's wonderfully written, wonderful sense of harmonies, a wonderful sense of narrative, even though it doesn't have a programmatic theme to it, it nevertheless has a very emotionally impactful and convincing beginning, middle, and end, complete with reprises of themes. There's no pause between the movements, which I find very interesting, especially for the mid 19th century. Now, that's all well and good. Why do I mention it in this context of conductors making or breaking a piece? Because this piece can be performed in two ways. It can be performed in a very polite, middle of the road manner, which almost makes it sound like ever so slightly augmented chamber music. Or it can be played with all of the depth, lyricism, emotional gravity, if you will, all of these all of these things that make it a profound experience. And when it's performed in that style, the piece really comes to life as something utterly profound and one of the finest pieces of its era. Frankly, one of the finest pieces of all time. And you can really tell the difference. Now, I never go and recommend things that I don't like on this channel because I try to keep things positive. I'll answer the phone in a moment. How do other people do that? I don't really know. Anyway, when you hear this performed by true greats, hold on, I'm just trying to shut this phone off. When you hear this performed by true greats, you really feel that this is a piece that is frankly proto-Wagnerian in a way. And the contrast between those good performances and the bad performances couldn't be greater. The one that I would recommend, I think, most of all would be Furtwängler's performance from the very early 50s. Absolutely marvelous. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And also, Karajan did a wonderful rendition in the early 70s, as well as a filmed rendition in the 60s with not the Vienna Philharmonic, but the Vienna State Symphony or Vienna State Symphony. Wonderful stuff. Check those out, and you can really feel the weight and the profundity and the symmetry and the beauty of this piece. 100% check that out. And you can see how, when performed correctly, a piece that a lot of people sleep on is actually one of the finest ever. There you go. Like, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Take care.